For Lab3 example 4, we're going to use 3 buttons that are attached to pins 4, 3, and 2, and our servo is connected to pin number 9. So we're going to control the servo, and we're going to have 3 positions at 0 degrees, 90 degrees, and 180 degrees. And we're going to play between those 3 positions using our push buttons. Here's my hardware ready, and let's go over my code. So the first thing that you need to do is to include the servo library. Make sure that you type it, so it's include servo.h, and that's it. It's already downloaded. When you download Arduino, it's included, so you don't have to install anything. Now let's put a name for our servo. I'm gonna call it SG90, which is the name of the servo motor that we're using. And we need an address for the memory that's going to be EEPROM, but we're going to use that later. Now let's do some definitions for our buttons. So I have 2, 3, and 4, right? So let's define. Let's call position 0 as my pin number 2. Okay. Let's make our servo. So SG90 that attached to connected to a pin. In our case, or at least my case, it's pin number 9. So SG90 attached pin number 9. And my pin mode for my button. So pin mode position 0 as an input. So before testing a button, let's just make sure that this thing works. So the way to test it is just call your servo SG90 and then write, and let's put a 0 first. So it should go to 0 position. Right now it's at 90 degrees. So once I run this code, it should go to 0. Let's see. There you go, it's in 0. So if I change this to 45, it'll go between 0 and 90. Good. If I write 180, I'll go to 180 degrees. Okay, so we know it works. Good. Now, if I press a button at my position 0, which is pin number 2, which is where this button is connected, if that's high, let's go to position 0. So as soon as I press the button, I'll go to position 0. Every time that you reset Arduino, I'll go to 90 degrees. Position 0, do it on right. I forgot my 0 here. Digital read, not right. Okay. So every time that you reset it, it automatically starts at 0. So let's press the button, and it's at 0, so it's working. Now, if you reset it, I'm gonna disconnect it. So here it's disconnected. I'm gonna put it back. It'll go to 90. It's just the way that the servo motor works. When you do the attach, it'll goes to 90. So press again, it'll go back to 0. Now let's add the next 2 buttons. This one's for 90 degrees, and the last one on the left, it's for 180. So same thing here. Position 90 and 180, right? And this should be 4 and 3. 3, 2, and 4. And again, those numbers come from the pins that I'm using. You can change them for whatever you need. It doesn't have to be those ones. I decided to use those, but that's up to you. Make our inputs 90, 180, and same thing here. So 0, 90, and 180. So position 90 and 180. So now I'm adding my 3 buttons. If I press this button will go, the button on the right will be 0, middle button it's 90, and left button it's gonna be 180. Let's upload it and give it a try. Okay, it reset. Let's go to 0, good, 90, and 180. So it works. Perfect. Now, let's make a function here to, let's call it update. And that function, what it's gonna do, it's that it's gonna update the position of my servo. Maybe it doesn't make sense right now, but once we use EEPROM, it'll be useful. So let's do void update. Let's call int new position. And right now, every time that I call my function, I'm just gonna do is gwrite that new position that I want to use. So instead of 180, it's gonna be new position. And I'm gonna call update 180. So when I press a button, I'm calling my function update and I'm sending a 180. So this 180, it's taken by my update function, and new position is equal to that 180 that's gonna be pasted into my gwrite. So that's how it works. 90 and so right now it won't have any, it won't make any difference. It'll be the same behavior. Let's give it a try just to make sure that it still works. Good. But one big problem is that every time that I reset it, my servo position resets because Arduino it's resetting. So I'm gonna disconnect it again. You'll see here it's disconnected. I'm gonna plug it back, and you'll see that my servo it's going back to 90 degrees, and that's normal. How can we avoid it to go to that position with EEPROM? We're gonna use for flash memory. So include EEPROM .h, and that's gonna help us to save our last position. So what we're gonna do now is that in our function we're not only saving our position into the servo, but we're gonna also save it into memory. So we're gonna do EEPROM update, then our address, which is 0, and we're gonna set our new position. So if we write a 90, that 90 will be saved into my servo, but it will also be saved into my EEPROM memory in the Arduino on address 0. So now we can read it every time that we restart the Arduino, and every time that we start it, it goes once into the setup function, right? So we need to read it from there. What we're gonna do then is do an EEPROM read. Let's make it saved position equal to EEPROM read, then my address, and then we're gonna do is G90 right our save position. So first we're gonna read from memory whatever the last value was saved into address 0, and we're gonna put it in save position. Then we're gonna put our servo in that position, but this will only happens when we reset the Arduino. And every time that we press a button, we're gonna update our servo, but we're also updating that address in memory that will be saved and will be read when we reset it. So let's give it a try. Okay. So right now it's saving. Let's put it at 180. Now I'm gonna disconnect it. You can see here it's disconnected. I'm gonna move my servo to any other position. I'm gonna turn it on. I'm gonna plug it, and it'll go back. It'll go through these lines in the setup, and when it reaches this line, it's gonna go to 180 because I saved it when I press the button in this line right here. So let's test it. It's plugged. And should work. Oh, sorry. I think something happened with my cable, but let's try again. So it's disconnected. I'm gonna put it back to another position. I'm gonna connect it. It's running. There you go. Now it's working. So, as you can see, with EEPROM, we've been able to save our last position in our servo and use it for the next time. So let's go to 0. I'm gonna disconnect it just to show it to you again. I'm gonna put it 90 degrees, more or less. I'm gonna connect it, and it should go back to our 0 position. See? There you go. So it works.